Hey, and welcome to the Weed Out, where we talk about the nonsense and weed out the bullshit happening in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson with co-host Akil Vicks.
Yo, what up?
Good to see you, Akil. Very glad to be
Good to
back.
be back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last time we talked, you and I talked was with Congressman McGovern. So if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back in the archive. And as always, you can go to www.theweedout.com or visit any of our social media pages and click on our link tree. All our links are there. You can see previous episodes, or you can always email us at theweedout@gmail.com if you have any ideas or any questions or concerns. Please feel free. If there's something you heard in the episode, but for whatever reason you didn't catch and you need to, feel free to email us. It's not a problem. So thank you for everybody that's been tuning in, and glad to have Akil back. Shout out to Akil. And just wanted to let you know we got a lot of positive feedback through my channels on our episode with Congressman McGovern. So thank you for
Nice.
being a part of that with us, and contributing for your part. And I was really grateful to have you because you know my style of talking is a little blunt and a little one track minded. Like I can't not think about police, and I was just glad you were there to kind of balance me out. I felt like you. I listened back to it and I edited it, and it felt like you really hit the more thoughtful kind of talked about the communication with the base. And I know all these things, but I have a really hard time when I have these people in front of me not being like, know what I think about you. I thought we held our cool with him because he's generally he's pretty affable and easy to get along with. But at the end of the day,
Yeah,
still a
absolutely.
politician. And like I think we discussed, he's closer to retirement than he is starting his career. So take that for a grain of salt, whatever he said. But yeah, so how was your first full episode? How did you feel about it?
I had a blast. I never really got into this politics thing thinking that I was going to be able to talk to people like McGovern. So, I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's good to see what people say, even if they don't give you the answer that you're hoping for. But just when you confront them directly, uh, you know, I'm always the type of person that like I want to have the argument. I want to have the debate. I don't want to I don't want to own somebody. I just want to like talk this shit through and like how do you respond to it? What do you tell yourself when confronted with, you know, a version of reality that you may not want to hear. So I was really happy to have that opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the next one anytime that comes along.
Well, getting one helps lead to the next. But we at the weed out. Our goal here is to platform and focus on workers, and what working
Yeah.
people go through. And obviously, that's all. We could debate endlessly on what that means. But for me, it's anybody that's not the 1%. even our class enemies, the manager class, we need to wake. We need to like kind of rattle their cage and get them to fucking realize we have more power together than we do, doing the owner class's bidding. And the owner class have really cornered a lot of markets, and this kind of ties into today's episode. Today's episode is going to be about uh, landlords colluding. So I guess this is really Akil's been working on an article for for his Substack on one. So please go check out his Substack. That will be in the links in the episode notes. I use Substack, is great. It's just like any other social media or media site. It's not perfect, but it's a way to get independent ideas out there. So please check out Akil's on one Substack. And so Akil, just kind of run us down what's going on with landlords. We're talking about big corporate landlords, and I'm sure there's local landlords too. But this is really your topic, so I'm more than happy to sit back, relax, and ask some questions.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. So like I wanted to write this piece because there's a lot of talk about Biden's economy and what some people are calling the vibe session, right? Your old friend Will Stansel talks about this a lot. And
For
there's
anybody
this
at home, Will Stansel, I was telling Akil off air, Will Stansel is like the reverse Terminator. He's sent from the past to drive me insane. Will Stansel is like a thought leader on Twitter, so I'm a thought leader on Twitter too. But
I don't know,
he's
I
he's got a
feel like that's
he's
giving thoughts a
following.
bad name.
I mean, he's literally just like when you look up MLK. If you ask ChatGPT to take that section from MLK's letter from Birmingham jail, and where he talks about the white moderate being more concerned with order than justice, that's Will Stansel. Everybody, like the man is the walking avatar of that 2-sentence line. Part of the speech, like walking avatar. Like he said in one of his back and forths with me, and he's like a decent account, but he like fights with from neo-Nazis to abolitionists and is like they're all the same. So, and then he doesn't understand why we keep popping up in his timeline. He's completely clueless and he's the main character. But he said something to me like, I was like, he described capitalism and he's like, even when things are good, there's winners and losers. So I quote tweeted that. I was like, so you admit even operating the best, this system produces bad outcomes for a certain percentage, and you're arguing about how many you're willing to allow, what the percentage you're willing to allow to be in poverty is. And that's a really shitty system. And he got all fucking mad and like tried to send his bots more, his minions after me, like with baity tweets. It was hilarious. The man has not fucked with me since, but I don't stop. Anyway, sorry about my rant. Will Stansel, you finally
No.
got shout out on the podcast. As I call him, and many others have nicknames for him. I don't call his name a lot. I have nicknames for him. So he's Bill Pencil. That's usually because he gets pissed if somebody doesn't call him Will. If you call him William, he doesn't like that. If you call him Willie, if you call him Bill, sometimes I call him Billiam, combination of Will and Billiam. Bill.
I've seen that with him, yeah.
And I'm somebody that like, my name's Spencer, so there's not too many, there's not too many ways you can go. So it never really bothered me if people don't call me by my first name or whatever, but he's the type of person, no, it's Will.
Yeah.
Yes. William is my father. Fuck you, dude. Anyway, sorry. The vibe session, please.
The idea that there's all these, by the standard numbers, the economy is just booming under Biden. And so people who are feeling a sense of economic anxiety are just kind of buying into a fabricated narrative. They're not actually experiencing economic precarity. They're just, if the vibes are off. Right. But the problem with that is that when you look at numbers like, if you look at raw unemployment, if you look at GDP is a big one, obviously, or if you just look at the stock market, there's a lot of economic reality that you don't capture in those numbers. And one of those things is rent burden. All right. So rent burden, in case people don't know, is defined by HUD, by the government, as when you need to pay more than 30% of your income in housing costs. Now, I can't remember the last time, when I was young and coming out of college, when I wasn't paying more than that in my income in housing. Apparently, in the last few years since COVID, it was around a third, like 30% of households were rent burdened. Post COVID, it's now 50%. And that's just over that threshold of 30%, right? So then you've got a huge increase of people paying more and more of their income in rent, up to 70% in some cases, where people have to decide between paying rent and paying their medical bills, or going to see the doctor in the first place, buying healthy food. or even just, having fun, because human beings should be able to have fun no matter what your income level is.
All of
Uh,
which all of which are good for the economy, just saying. I'm not a
oh, yeah,
capitalist.
yes.
I hate this, I hate defining life by economics, but the thing that pisses me off is if a poor person makes $5 more an hour and whoever's making 35 is like, that's ridiculous, they're getting closer to me. It's like, but it's good overall. That means they have money to fucking spend on shit, and that's good for your local business, whether even if it's Walmart, like, which isn't a local business, but like foot traffic's good. That means that job will be guaranteed. I hate this system, and it's like you don't even understand your own goddamn system.
Yeah. Well, and it's the thing about, I think the problem with capitalism, like, there's so many problems with capitalism, but like one of the core fundamental problems with capitalism is that it doesn't it's not just a mode of economic production, right? It's a fucking cult, and you cannot convince someone who identifies as a capitalist that all these mechanisms, the market, prices, commodities, and all these things that these econ 101 things, they're not a natural occurrence that happens in nature, right? This is a man-made construct. And an economy has a purpose, right? Like, we don't just create economies because there's an economy gene in our brains that make us set up markets and have people build some things and some people build other things, and then we create a currency. No, we do that because we need a system of creating and distributing goods and services. We are humans. We need stuff. We need to make stuff. We need to figure out what's the best system for doing that. And when it comes to like just a simple market, you know, there is a point of view where the purpose of a market is that people can go to that market and find the things they need for an affordable price, or not even a price at all. If in the case of, if it's like a library, you can check things out for, you know, amount of time. But the point of the market is that people need stuff. All the stuff is concentrated here. Come and get the stuff. Uh, Most people, especially capitalists, think the purpose of a market is for someone to make a profit. And there are problems with that. And especially when it comes to housing, because housing is an inelastic good for all the Econ 101 heads out there. Housing is an inelastic good, meaning that people will pay more than they're willing to access it because they need it. It's not a commodity that strictly adheres to the laws of supply and demand, right? Like, it's not something where if the demand for Air Jordans goes up and the price shoots up to like $1,000 a pair, I don't have to buy Air Jordans because that's not necessary for me to live my life. Housing obviously is a little different. um And because, we view these markets as solely something for which someone should be trying to make a profit instead of trying to provide people with the commodity in the market. Um, Housing is one of those things where you see a lot of greedflation, right? You see a lot of corporations, large firms finding ways to increase prices, uh, beyond what your supply demand curve would suggest the price should be, right? So there's this company called RealPage, and what RealPage is, it's a pricing software for landlords. Okay, so if you're a mom and pop landlord, you're probably, you know just trying to, like, you get your apartment appraised that you own, or whatever your house that you're renting, whatever your property that you're renting, you figure out, okay, I want to charge 1,500 a month for this space. And then you go out and you see, okay, well, people, at this price, people aren't really coming to try to rent my building. I'll drop the price to get someone into my building. Or conversely, you can get a lot of people interested in your building. You can say, like, you know what, maybe I can raise the price because so many people want it, so might be willing to pay more. That's normally what you think of when you think of a free capitalist market, right? When you are a large firm, a large landlord who owns tens of thousands of units, um, you have something called you have a department or an office or a person who's in charge of something called revenue management, which means that this person is trying to maximize profit in all areas all the time. If there is an ounce of profit that was not realized, then your revenue manager or your revenue management team has failed. So what RealPage does, it provides an algorithm. It takes a data forward approach to revenue management for apartment buildings. And if I'm using terminology that sounds like a bunch of corporate bullshit, that's because it pretty much is. What RealPage does in reality is that they provide an algorithm in the app that takes in a whole bunch of data from all the clients that use RealPage, and this includes leasing agreements, rents, you know, other types of costs that these people incur. And the RealPage algorithm, it's called YieldStar, takes all this data, crunches it, and what do you know? It tells every landlord that they should increase their rents. Um, and it, there's basically it's basically using ones and zeros, using an algorithm to justify the practice of continuously raising rates, no matter what the vacancy is in the units. This app told, leasing managers, it's okay if you've got like a 3%, 5% vacancy in your building. Just keep raising the rents. Eventually, people will come. And basically, what makes this very cartelish is that part of the data that this algorithm is using to tell people to raise their rents is the rents of other landlords nearby, right? So basically, it's ensuring that anyone who uses the software isn't going to compete in the market. They aren't going to undercut someone's price, because if one landlord starts undercutting prices, they'll steal tenants, and then the other buildings will have to lower prices to compete for tenants, and that will drive prices down. What YieldStar does, what RealPage does, is it gives these large corporate landowners a good enough reason and the evidence necessary. Sorry, I got my stupid phone ringing. Uh, it gives these large landlords enough data, enough justification to always raise rents at way beyond what the normal market seemingly will bear, because they know that everyone else around them was also raising rents, so they know they won't be undercut.
So,
Um,
if I
yeah,
can just chime in for the people listening at home, the way I am hearing this, it sounds kind of like how Uber prices in a way, but in a way that the customer, aka the landlord, always wins. It's using real time data to like constantly tweak the numbers, and it's always tweaking it up,
right,
right?
right,
Because it's promising like, oh, we're not going to fuck you over and give this data to a landlord over here, um, so they can undercut you. We're gonna, it's like everybody wins because we'll ensure the rents just go up and up, without realizing that there's like you can only bleed people dry for so long. And I just want to chime in because it sounds really negative, and I just want to remind people at home this is why housing should be a human right, shouldn't be a, a commodity. And when we say commodity, I say this about food too. Water, food, healthcare, and housing should not be for profit. Period. And land shouldn't. We got to rethink about what we mean by owning land and owning property. So homework at home. Look into land back. Look into how many countries have said no to human food being a human right at the UN. Google which countries did that. So there is solutions here. They're big, but I think where Akil is going, saying we
Well,
have to think out there. We have to think out. We have to do something different because this is unsustainable.
it's totally unsustainable, and you see, the so the main problem here, because Biden, Biden is really, really fucking really bad on a lot of issues. But I will say he's marginally better than most other Democrats on the regulatory state. Right now, his Department of Justice is they just raided some offices in Atlanta in connection to investigating RealPage. There's a federal lawsuit against the company for circumventing antitrust law. Um, and it's funny because the chief technology guy behind RealPage and YieldStar is this guy Jeffrey Roper, who in the 90s uh, was investigated by the DOJ for doing something, basically doing the exact same thing for airlines. He worked at Alaska Airlines in their revenue management department, and there was already a piece of software that was used to help airlines set prices. And what this guy did was the same thing he's doing with real estate, in that he got everyone to share their data on airline routes and prices, and use that to tell everyone to raise their fares because they knew that other people wouldn't be lowering their fares. The Justice Department estimated that this cost people buying airplane tickets $1 billion from 1988 to 1992, when these airlines were using the system in this way. So there's and that case ended in a settlement. The Justice Department ended up not pursuing the case all the way through, but they got a settlement and a consent decree. And this Jeffrey Roper guy ended up leaving the country for a few years until he came back to the States to do the same thing in real estate. So we'll see. I'm going to keep my eyes on this case. We'll see what happens with RealStar, or RealPage and their algorithm YieldStar. But I think what's important to understand is that this is a visible symptom of a much, much deeper problem, which something you're talking about, Spencer, is that when you treat housing as a commodity, and housing is more than just a commodity in our capitalist context, it's a wealth building asset, right? It's something that when you buy a house or you buy an apartment building, you buy a piece of land, your expectation is that the value of that land and subsequently the price of that land is going to increase. And what that creates is economic and political incentives for the price and cost of housing to never go down. So no matter what any YIMBY is saying about, yes, build some luxury condos and include a couple of affording housable units in my backyard, or any sort of complicated tax incentive plan by the government to incentivize building affordable housing, all of the economic and all the political pressure is going to be keeping the housing supply limited, keeping prices going up indefinitely, which means more and more people are going to become unhoused. Or at this point, half the country is rent burdened because everyone expects their ownership in land to continue paying off and continue paying off. And this is not something that you can fix, by putting a band-aid on it. You can, if the DOJ can make a case against RealPage, that's great. These landlords, especially these large corporate landlords, that's the other part of the story, is that through this boom and this accelerated boom and bust cycle we've been living through since the '08 crash, Wall Street has bought a fuck ton of land, especially residential housing, because it's a solid investment. It's something they know that they can increase the price in over and over and over again. And as more and more uh, you know uh, renting of housing is being owned by these large Wall Street firms, the more and more they're going to use stuff like RealStar or RealPage to remove any and all human element. In the ProPublica story, back in 2022 when ProPublica first broke this story. They've got all these quotes from these executives basically bragging about how cruel they're being to tenants. They're, saying like, "Oh, we had a really high turnover rate. We had to kick a lot of people out, but hey, our profit increased 17%." Or, "Oh, we're leaving like one or two units empty for no good reason. We could lower the rent and get people in there, but it's not profitable. It's not that profitable for us to do that." And so, you know, you, you're not going to be able to fix uh the issues with housing, and issues with housing drive a lot of the other economic issues. When housing is eating up that much of your income, even if incomes have increased lately, but they're nowhere near matching inflation in general, but housing in particular. There's just no tethering between incomes and the cost of housing. It's completely blown open. So people are going to feel that, and the only way to address that is to stop viewing housing as a wealth building asset and a commodity. I think obviously more public housing is a good way to if you're not going to have the political will to just pull a revolution and confiscate all the land and all the housing, just by building public housing and inserting that in the market, you can put downward pressure on rents for these privately owned units. Co-op housing is another great alternative. There's a lot of interesting models in other countries. Canada has a couple interesting models. I know, and I think Vienna has a very successful long running co-op public housing model. But the general idea is that uh, you as a state, as a collective, people, you can purchase a building, have tenants buy into that building, and those tenants own a piece of that building. And if they're paying a fee or rent every month, that all that is going directly into the maintenance. It's not going into making a profit for some landowner, because the tenants are the owners of the building. So there are things that we can do to get away from this housing as solely a commodity and not a human right model that we have. But until that's something that we're seriously considering, I'm sorry, Billy Stan. It's gonna be a vibe session for foreseeable future, because these rents aren't coming down. There is no incentive to build nearly as much as you would need to build your way out of this. Um,
Right.
People are still going to vote for zoning laws that restrict high density housing. People are still going to be pissed off about walkable cities. People want to live in sprawl, because in sprawl, the value of your property goes up.
Yeah, and the thing that I can't help but notice, like the 1,000 mile back view, is there. We know for a fact that prison labor is being used by giant corporations, and these same people are the ones investing in the housing stuff. They overlap. All these companies overlap, right?
Yeah.
And now they're actually hearing cases all the way up to the Supreme Court about, basically, can we cage you for being homeless? I'm paraphrasing and being a little glib, but essentially, ultimately, it ends up you get arrested, yada yada yada. You're in a cage doing slave labor, prison labor,
Yeah.
and it's just like, man, this is why we have to get rid of this, like, for profit on the basic necessities at the very least. For me, that's the compromise. I mean, we all need food, we all need housing, we all need water, and we all need healthcare. Like, it's very simple, in a way. But yeah, I don't know what to do. I agree with you. It has to be decoupled from the wealth building aspect. And I just I don't know. Feedback from the audience would be great on this. Like, what is everybody? We have to all come together with ideas, because it just feels like we're kind of barreling down this scary dystopian roller coaster, and I don't like to get alarmist. And I don't think there's a giant conspiracy. I'm not afraid of Project 2025 for that same reason. It's the same fucking kooks. It's the Heritage Foundation guys. They do this every 4 years. They're fucking weird.
They're so
Anyways,
weird. They're
they're
such
so
weird
fucking
people.
weird. So weird. That's a different conversation for a different day. These extreme right Catholics are fucking bizarre. Anyways, but what they wanted, they're always working. The upper class, the owner class, it's in their best interest to put us down. So we have to find ways. And like, I love looking into different countries' models. Like, there's got to be a way. How many people on this planet? Some people have to have ideas. So talk about it with your friends. It takes all of us.
It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard ass because you gotta, a lot of people in this country owning a house and having their home values increase is their only source of real wealth. It's their only shot at any sort of financial stability for them or for their kids. So it's going to be a tough sell to generations of people who grew up on that paradigm, to like understand that this, the one thing that the elite let them have, which is this house that can accrue value, is also, and is helping to drain the economy. It's helping to suck out everything out of the middle of the economy and force it upwards. But if you find yourself, having a conversation with your, slightly conservative uncle or whatever in your workplace, I find is one question that can like kind of cut through a lot of like, bullshit when we're talking about economics and capitalism, socialism. Ask people what they think the economy is for, right? What is the purpose of economic activity? Because in my mind, the purpose of an economy is to make sure that people are making and distributing the things that people need, right? It's a system by which we organize the production and distribution of goods and services. If you think that, making sure that, someone's fucking stock portfolio has their little real estate line on the ledger and that money is going up and up and up, if you think an economy is mainly for that, that's not an economy that's going to last very long, because there's just only so much capital and money and labor and resources in the middle of an economy that you can suck up and draw to the top to increase that balance sheet. If you think an
Yeah.
economy is meant so that people have houses, so people are making and distributing housing, then we need to figure out a different method of distributing the housing and producing the housing.
And maintaining it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But so I'm been the food business my whole life. Like, literally since I was 16 years old, I've been doing food related stuff. And so I think about the food distribution production a lot. And I've done different aspects. I've been the guy handing you the food in the store. I've been the guy trucking the food. I've been the guy inspecting and quality checking stuff. Like, and meat and fish has been the primary thing. And, fish, for example, the oceans are cooking, right? And if I was running a company with the knowledge I have, and I don't have a ton of knowledge, but like, I've been hearing enough grumbling from fishermen and people related to fishermen about how it's been really unpredictable the last couple of years. And it's like, gee, I wonder why. But that's fine. The guys on the ground kind of know what's going on. But then the people that own the companies, and I'm not even talking about the company I have worked for or work with. I'm talking about like the Cisco's, the Black River Performance Food, PFG, like all that
Mm-hmm.
shit. Dude, they think this stuff they can just mine it forever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't understand that there's a symbiosis we should be living in with, and farmers, there's sustainable farming, what a lot of white people don't do. There are white people doing it, but the majority of white people in this country are doing, American conventional industrialized farming, and that's really fucking bad. There's a way to farm that's super sustainable, and we know how to do it. There's plenty of people that know how to do it. It's just they see this earth as like a never-ending resource pit that they can just destroy, and they don't care about 5 years from now. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess this business is dried up, and they clap their hands and move on to the next thing and start buying all the housing.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it. That's it. I mean, it's a cult. It really does function like a cult. Like it's not, I can't really take it seriously anymore in
Well,
the face
we
of
have
all
to.
the
We
evidence.
have to.
Yeah. Well,
Because
I mean,
it's
I can't. What I mean, say I can't take people like Billy
no,
Stan
I know what you meant.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
funny though.
it's astrology for white men. Let's be real.
Yeah.
And that's an insult to astrology, because there is something about astrology that's probably real. Like there's an element that people pick up on about space and time and stars and all that stuff. And there's probably truth to it. It's more true than economics bros. That's a completely made up thing. Call it a science, not a science. Um
Well, I will say on your point about the food, if people want to hear about some good news, my partner Nora is about to get a piece out in the Nation about these basically kids and some really cool adults who got a universal school meals bill passed,
oh, cool.
and yeah, and a big part of it is integrating like local sustainable farming into the schools. One of the things that Nora found in her reporting, because she's been reporting on school food for a while now. One of the things she found was that we don't think about it like this, but public schools who are serving lunches are pretty much the largest restaurant chain in the country. Their purchasing can do a lot and set a lot of standards for local economy. Um, there is a town in England, I forget where, but somewhere around London, where they were facing a financial crisis because Tory government taking away all the federal funding. So they needed to figure out something to do to save their little town. And what they decided to do was, we're going to only spend public money in our own community, right? They made it, they tried to, wherever they could possibly, they were going to employ local businesses, employ local farms for food. They set up their own publicly run theater, a movie theater. So people, because they didn't have a movie theater, so they set up a publicly owned movie theater for people to watch, new releases and stuff like that. And this is kind of
Socialism,
similar,
eh?
a little bit of the old S word.
A little S word there, a little S word there. So for those playing at home, socialism is a transitionary period between capitalist economies to communist economies. It's where the people own the means of production, yada yada yada. Essentially, what's happening here, and it's I have a hard time talking about stuff because I think it's fucked up that anybody would want to organize society based on an economic system. But I understand that is the language that we all use, so I have to go along with it. It goes against me inside, but I'm always going to be. I think that's my anarchy. That's my anarchism. I can't. I like have to be like, no, we're not doing. I don't even want to do it that way.
Yeah.
So I have to check myself because there's a lot of other people, but yeah, I mean, we can do it. Is the point.
Yeah, these
Totally
aren't complicated solutions, right? The school is just saying like, oh, hey, here's a lot of people who used to farm, used to make their own food, being put out of business by these huge agribusinesses. Why don't we employ them as a public school? Have them make food for themselves, for their community, and for the students. That we can afford it. The students get good, healthy, organic, non fucked with food for
Yeah,
free.
just the transport.
Uh,
So for somebody that's been in food transport, the transporting, as good as it can be, you're still putting shit on trucks, and there's times where stuff is not in transition between the freezer and the truck, and how there's a million places along the supply chain. That's why it's crazy that we have centralized food chains. It's really bad for public. Like, this is how salmonella can get all over the country in like fucking 2 days. Whereas if you're
Yeah,
doing
but
it
it's
all
great for profit.
centralized, if you're decentralized and local, you lock it down now when there's an outbreak of something from a slaughter or whatever, because that shit does But like, yeah, when you centralize everything, it's like, you know, most of our chicken in this country, fun fact for people at home, is raised in America, put on a ship alive to China, slaughtered and processed in China, and to us packaged on the shelves. To a
That's
capitalist,
so
that makes
insane.
the stress
It's
on the animal alone. Forget all the sanitary stuff. The stress on the animal alone.
yeah.
Like, what are you
It's
doing here?
it's surreal. It's really surreal, and you get down to these little details, you know, that are obscured. We're talking about, you know, oh, this, you know, global free trade is the way to, like, you know, bloodlessly support democracy, but no, you're just shipping chickens around for no fucking reason.
uh, so,
That's how I'm
where
going
are
to
we
describe capitalism.
moving shit around for no fucking reason? Honestly, um, so where are we going to be able to? When is your piece going to be out? Where is it going to be published? And is it going to be out this week, or yeah, just spit out the details.
I'm hoping to have it out either late this week or early next. If it doesn't, I'm trying to shop it around now. If it doesn't come out probably on Jacobin, you know, this week or early next, it'll be up on One definitely in about, like, you know, a week or so.
Well, so everybody's got a sneak preview at the very least, a couple of days early. So
Yeah,
where
yeah, and I would recommend, if you want to know more before my piece comes out, because I'm trying to link it towards the broader overall economy. If you just want to learn about RealPage and this history, the ProPublica piece from 2022 is like a really good, you know, resource and source of information on just how kind of, like, you know, craven and lizard brain this whole company and their executives are. So I recommend that for people who want to know more about this, you know, RealPage and this informal cartel of landlords.
and you also wrote a piece for Jacobin, like just over a year ago, about housing in general and Biden. So I'll link
Yeah.
the show notes too. So it's kind of all ties in a little bit.
And actually, there's a more recent piece when you brought up that Supreme Court case. I actually did write about that for Jacobin. Johnson versus Grants Pass is the case. And yeah, I talked to an advocate for a spokesperson for the law firm that's representing the unhoused plaintiffs in that case. So yeah, you should, you know, go check that out.
I'll link it all in the show notes on the website,
Yeah.
and on the just show notes on your podcast player, yada yada. And again, if it's not there, if something we mentioned, this is a fun time reminder to say if something we mentioned and you can't find it, please feel free to reach out to us at the weedout@gmail.com. Pretty good about responding to messages. Same thing on social media. Look forward to hearing from y'all. Love hearing feedback. I don't know. Any final thoughts before we move on to Guler and tomfoolery, Akil?
You know, just be mad, people. Always be mad.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I play life like Dennis Rodman, you know, just chip on my shoulder, acting crazy, you know. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna get that rebound. I'm gonna get that fucking rebound. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, come hell or high water, and you know, and I, not individually, I mean against the system, because I'm not going to let nothing slide. And so I think that's a nice segue slide into Ghoulery and tomfoolery, because I have a chip on my shoulder about the Karen Reed case in Canton, excuse me, not to be confused with Sandra Birchmore and Stoughton. Same in you know, departments involved in the investigations in both those cases. Seems like these fat white cops in South Shore Boston, you know, they can't stop murdering people. You know, they should chill out, maybe have a moon pie. Anyway, so Karen Reed, the Ghoulery and tomfoolery is actually going to be, I'm an article regarding Maura Healey's response to the state trooper testimony in the Karen Reed case, where text messages were revealed, yada yada. We'll get into that. But the reason I have a bone to pick with this whole fucking thing, should be rejoicing, because people are paying attention to police malfeasance and they're glued to it and they can't look away. It's like the O.J. Simpson trial for white towny true crime fans. And I'm like sucked in a little bit, because like it's South Shore where I'm from. These people, dude, it's like I'm in a fucking time warp, like I feel like I'm back home, and it's just scrolling on TikTok and Twitter. And I'm glad people are talking about it. I really am. But I do feel like people are missing the forest through the trees, or for the trees. And it's just like, oh my God. And Maura Healey, her statement kind of reiterates that for me. They act like this is an anomaly. So my bone to pick really is, like, if you're on true crime, it's a propaganda tool, and people willingly participate in it because it is fun. It's dopamine. Like, who doesn't like a good whodunit? But these are real people's lives. And then you're also like bolstering the police state by saying we need these people to solve these crazy crimes, and it's like they suck at it. What are we talking about? Like if they were fucking playing handball, they couldn't hit the side of the barn, dude. Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm pulling this from NBC News Boston, News 10. Healey, troopers, quote, terrible behavior in Karen Reed case harms law enforcement. Trooper Michael Proctor was a lead investigator on a case, and his testimony revealed he had made multiple disparaging remarks about Reed to friends, family, and even his supervisors. The testimony this week of a lead state police investigator in the Karen Reed case was, quote unquote, terrible and tarnishes the integrity of law enforcement, Governor Maura Healey said Thursday, while also declining to weigh in further on the closely watched trial. Reed is accused of backing her car into her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and leaving him outside Canton home January 2022. His attorneys contend she's being framed as part of a larger cover-up, and the trial has attracted the attention of media and internet sleuths from around the world. Trooper Michael Proctor was the lead investigator on the case and took the stand in Dedham District Court this week. During cross-examination, Reed's attorneys had Proctor read aloud text messages he sent to other troopers and friends disparaging Reed. Connor physical appearance, using vulgar language, suggesting he had made up his mind based on evidence as to Reed's guilt, saying he wished Reed would kill herself. Quote, it's terrible. It's completely unprofessional. It does harm, frankly, to the dignity and integrity of the work of the men and women across the state police and law enforcement. So as former attorney general and as governor, I'm disgusted by that, Healey told reporters on Thursday afternoon when asked about Proctor's text. It goes on. It's a whole bunch. It's propaganda still. So even when they're criticizing cops, they just can't. Like, dude, the lead is buried. I hope she kills herself. Basically said he made up his mind about how he's going to prove it. What we're worried about is the names, the vulgar names. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So Akil, do you need any more information? Because I'll gladly fill you everybody in on the deets, but also I'll save everybody's time. Just know,
Yeah,
it's some fuckery.
it. Did you ever watch that Netflix show, The Confession Tapes?
I believe my wife did. I don't remember it though.
It would give you an aneurysm, because basically it's just cops being the absolute fucking worst for like however many hours, every episodes of that show it is. But it's all these basically confessions where the cops got confessions from people, where it's the same thing. They decided someone's guilty, and based on mostly a hunch, not really like any evidence. And then you get to see how that goes into their trying to extract a confession. And it's the most, they think they have like superpowers. I think sometimes they think that they're actually Batman, that like they can just smell guilt on someone. And then once that happens, you don't have to worry about actual police work, actual detecting anything. You can just figure out how to prove that they're guilty. And being is that they're now a criminal, they're no longer a human being, so you can just say whatever you want. You can, wouldn't be so bad if the perps just killed themselves. Saved me a bunch of time. Yeah. I on Healy though, like I love this idea that the cops have some sort of like integrity that that we're losing. Like since when? Since when have police as an institution displayed any sort of, uh institutional pride in their integrity? I'm wondering when this was.
I mean, I remember there's some really nice things they did with the '60s with their dogs and with the fire department and the fire hoses. That looked like it was a fun time. They were just cooling them off on a hot day.
The dogs were hot and they had to cool them off. Yeah,
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 no,
no, yeah, I
everybody
hear
was
you.
just hot. They were just they ordered the fire
They were just
department
hot.
to yeah. No,
Oh, and they gave ice cream. They gave ice cream to kids.
oh yeah. Well,
Yeah, I remember that.
anyways,
So
yes,
all
more
right, I stand corrected. I'm sorry. The
more
cops are great.
Healy being high on the supply and also being the top law enforcement officer in the state of Massachusetts and formerly the top investigator in Massachusetts. She went from, she's the chief now. I mean, everybody needs to remember that governor, president, they're like the chief of law enforcement. What they say kind of goes. They don't do any of the dirty work, but like, so when people try to act like they don't, this is all happening under them. It's like, come on, man. they tell the next guy who's in charge of that department what to do. And
Yeah.
so for her to be shocked, dude, she was AG. Now how many fucking and they our government, Massachusetts state government, doesn't really have great sunshine laws. So there's a lot of stuff we are not able to even access if we wanted to. So there's probably a ton of cases in her term of AG being attorney general that are just like rife with cops being fuckheads. And there's times where they decline to prosecute. In this case, they kind of out of the bag, and Karen went to right wing. I can't say that word. Provocateurs. I have a podcast and I have words I can't say. Provocateurs. I can't say it. And people like Turtle Boy. Yeah, thank you. This is why I have more well-read people on the podcast. I'm just a guy who lists things up and down. And so anyways, she played the game. She played the chess game against the state right, and she's calling their bluff. I don't know what the fuck happened then. I don't really care. I am just convinced that cops are fucking either sociopaths or they're brainwashed. They're two categories. They're sociopaths and they enjoy other people's pain, and then they're just brainwashed and not very critical thinkers, and including their family members. It's a cult. It's like a subsect of the capitalism cult. Like we force the capitalism, whether they realize it or not. That's their cult.
It's the armed wing of capitalism.
Yeah, and they take their shit seriously. It's like I'm convinced every every town and city in Massachusetts, the mayor is a figurehead. The real leader of the city is the chief of police. Like the cops get everything they fucking want. And because we also gave them all weapons, and we have Holyoke won't even tell their own citizens what they have for weapons. Like, are you fucking kidding me? They know what they told Joanna and I. They told us we don't want it to get out. It's a It's a a counterinsurgency issue. We don't want the public to know what weapons we have because a gang might come in and rob us. It's like fucking police, dude. What? You have a fortress.
That's wild.
You have a clubhouse.
That's so fucking wild,
dude. It's in writing. That's in writing.
Yeah,
somewhere. I
counterinsurgency.
Yeah, they're basically saying we could be doing an op, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
That's wild.
Yeah.
To bring it full circle, because there's a third party in there. There's the mayor, there's the police, and there's real estate interests. The real estate interests are the ones that are basically giving the political and financial muscle for the police to come in and run these mayors. And all
Eric
the
Sewer in
progressive mayors,
Northampton. Eric Sewer in Northampton
yeah,
during Black Lives Matter 2020. There's multiple emails of him emailing the chief, really buttering her up and like, remember I did this and this, for your police association. It's like, make sure my buildings are extra taken care of. They
yeah,
happily throw their fucking weight around, and it's totally acceptable. Everybody's like, well, they're a business owner. Like, we're all brainwashed.
yeah. No, but it really is like that kind of like, all these progressive mayors that got elected in the wake of George Floyd, painting BLM on the sidewalk. As soon as the shit hit the fan, they were signing the purchase orders on tear gas because they know that their political future is tied to whether the real estate interests in their city are happy. And the real estate interests, they want cops around to keep their property values up. And they want the cops well funded. And they basically want, public security for their properties. And that's what the police are there for, to protect their property. So, like it people, Democrats running on a progressive ticket, like there was never going to be that sort of radical change coming from the mayor's office. It's just impossible because the mayor, they are operating under the assumption that if businesses leave and property values go down, they're not going to get another term. And that's the guillotine that the elite have over these politicians, especially these local politicians, like when you're in the position of a mayor. And so, yeah, you shouldn't be surprised when cops just get whatever the fuck they want. I mean, like, we're most of these cities' budgets, you look at their budget, it's like the city is a paramilitary organization that occasionally provides water and gas for people. Like, it's not,
No, no,
the
no, no, no.
bulk of
They have official uniforms, dude. Their cars have writing on them.
yeah, some of them say to protect and serve.
Oh, Holyoke, that's the best one. The Holyoke ones are in quotation marks. Dude, they're
Yeah,
playing in
I've seen that.
they're
I've
playing
seen
it
that.
in your face. They're playing in your face.
Yeah,
I've said that to my neighbors. I'm like, you ever notice that's in quotation? They kind of look at me. I'm like, that's usually said in like jest. You know that, right? Like,
yeah,
like they're literally being like, yeah, we protect and serve. No,
yeah.
no, fuck you, dude. Actually, I saw them serving a warrant this morning. There was fucking 20 cop cars down the street from me. It was like, what the fuck? Overkill, man. They were
Yeah,
all hype. They were all so hype. And I'm like, this is this person's worst day. Um, that's all I could think. I don't even care what the fuck
yeah.
they did to my neighbor. I'm like,
Right. Yeah, I know.
this is
And like
somebody
half
that
of the
like,
time
yeah. I
is,
can't help but think like when he gets out and he has to like sit around for 2 months, if he can get out, like just the hanging over your head, that shit sucks.
it doesn't help anyone. It's not made anyone safe. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, like one of my favorite historical nuggets is that like, you know, this whole thing with cops being there to protect property, that is literally very beginnings of professional police. That's all they've been there to do. And the first police call boxes in America, I think I want to say that these were in Boston actually.
They
But the
were.
first police, what you say?
They were, and Boston's
Yeah,
one of the first. I don't know if they were the first, but they're one of the first incorporated police departments too. Like
I
they're one
know.
of the
I know
OG.
Boston was the first uniformed officers, and Philly was like the first professionalized police department. Our two cities of grace.
Yeah.
the,
Well,
the worst.
we're the birthplaces of American fascism. Let's just be honest. Like, I literally grew up spitting like not spitting distance, but like a 5 minute bike ride from where John Adams and John Quincy Adams were born. Like,
Yeah.
talk about evil motherfuckers, man. Evil motherfuckers. And people tell these stories like this is a quaint little story. It's like, yeah, they didn't own slaves, but man, they did a lot of shady ass shit. This dude
Well,
just
I,
didn't
I
want to pay
was
taxes.
I was researching some of the Sons of Liberty shit, the Boston Tea Party people. You know, I recently put out an article about protests, American protests. People don't realize how fucking like the Sons of Liberty were basically the Houthi rebels, like of that period of time. They were tarring and feathering anybody who said anything positive about the British. They harassed this one dude to the point where they burnt down several of his buildings, chased him into like an army garrison, burned him in effigy. When he got away from that and then lived a little bit longer and he died of natural causes, they protested his funeral and threatened his family for mourning him when he died. And these are the heroes of the American Revolution. And people want to say that like drum circles at fucking Columbia
I thought you
for
were talking about,
Palestine are
dude.
too much.
Dude, the second half of that really like spaced out a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, is he talking about Whitey Bear?"
Yeah,
That's the tradition of Boston. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. When you act like a gangster, it's absolutely unhinged and fucked up. And just it's I told this
they
dude
were
on Twitter
gangsters.
who was like impressed that I've been able to piss all these people off. And I was like, oh, you and get them to go away. And it's like, oh, you have to like let them know that you will come unglued at any minute. You don't actually ever have to come unglued. You just have to let them think you mate. And because there is something about the Boston, and I'm sure there's a lot of this old money, old colony shit, and Philly, New York, and Boston kind of all this in common. And dude, the attitude is wild. Like, so the difference between, like you're saying, the Houthis, Whitey Bulger, and then Whitey Bulger's went to high school. His brother went to my high school, which is a prep school, so he had like a legitimate brother too. So it's like where
Mm-hmm.
there's a thug, there's also legitimate arms somewhere too.
Yeah, Ben Franklin was a legitimate brother. Yeah,
Right.
Ben Franklin was going like, oh, let me petition for freedom for the colonies, and then Sam Adams is just fucking wrecking shit.
Right. Blowing shit up and
Yeah.
literally destroying property like a motherfucker. And people get all upset about Starbucks windows getting broken. It's like, what country are
Do
we
you know how your country was founded? These were fucking rich ass gangsters who hated paying taxes, and they just were like, I'm gonna need you to come up off this country, son. And then they
No, and then they
got
wonder
that
why. You even think about remember the panic in the 90s when hip hop kind of popped off, like to age us. So I was, in middle school, high school, in the 90s. There was the whole thing about oh, these guys are coming up and they're acting X, Y, and Z. And it's like, how is this any different than any young money in this country? Any young money in this country, any money in this country goes above and beyond to show you how wealthy they are. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
Like historically,
Yeah.
it's part of the American. Like that's what we are. We got really quick.
Yeah. Why do you think they were wearing Rolexes and polos? Like, they were emulating fucking the 80s. Like, this hip hop was an art form that came of age in the 80s when people like Donald Trump were making gold bathrooms. What did you expect?
Right. And another example of relatively new money. Like he's like third generation, and the money didn't really pop until his dad. So he didn't grow up the way his kids grew up at all. But yeah, he's still relatively new money. That's why nobody in New York City scene fucked with him, and that's why the NFL was like, nah, dude, no. When he tried to buy the Bills, they fucking boxed him out so hard because you are not legit. You're not our kind of money.
Although I kind of always wonder if that's his Hitler could have been a painter moment. Like if we just let him buy a fucking NFL team, maybe this whole saga would never have taken off.
Well, all right. Let's hope we can sort our way out of this and kind of right the ship a little bit as a world, as a global community, because it's a global problem now. I mean, everything's a global problem, but now it's really a global problem. Our politics are fucking everybody's life up. And anyways, back to the ghoulery and tomfoolery. It's not fun at all. It's like absolutely to try to spin this as like, oh, is this one individual officer really tainted the image of the same state troopers that have been busted with an overtime scheme that went on for decades. I don't know. Like, there's, do you Google state trooper like scandal? There's tons of them, and that's the ones we know about. And she has to know about more. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
She was the top cop. She had
to
to bury shit.
Yeah. Because because those two departments are, they have the same goal. They're just trying to clear the streets of, the garbage that capitalism leaves behind, basically.
Unfortunately, they see human beings as garbage, and
yeah,
that's why they're ghouls. And yeah, so I'm giving that full ghoulery. I'm going full ghoulery with a side hustle and wow, money. I hate money. I hate it so much. I want it to burn. The concept upsets me. As Joanna always says, it's made up. It's completely made up. It's literally it's a human invention. Like what? So don't tell me we can't do something. We invented this, so we can definitely invent shit. Don't tell me we can't. This is nonsense. Fiat currency. Like what? I'm sure somebody can make sense of like, then why even have it? Like, what are we doing? Anyways, that's the weed out, I guess. I am, Akil is on one, and I am tired of the bullshit. And thank you, everybody, as always, for listening to the weed out. And I hope you had a good time listening to this really sad stuff. Just remember, if we keep weeding out the bullshit, we keep talking, we support one another, we build community, both online, in person, and across platforms, across universes. We can do this. We can make our world a better place. It's totally doable. I'm not to be all doom and gloom. I do believe there is reason to have hope. People are waking up, and just keep weeding out the bullshit. And that's it for me. Akil, please send them on out.
Hey, thanks for listening to us. I'm always glad to be here. Probably be back soon. And yeah, just what Spencer said, man. Let's just keep talking, keep weeding out the bullshit, and just everyone just be there for each other. At the end of the day, that's all we really got. Just be there for each other.
Thank you, everybody. You can always go to theweedout.com, check out anything we mentioned in the episode. If you need to get in contact with us, you can always go to any of our social media or email us at theweedout@gmail.com. And Akil, just give them your handles real quick.
Yeah, you can find me at Kizzy Rock and Rolla on Twitter. But mainly I'm at on one at Substack, Akil Vicks at Substack. You can drop me a note. Yeah, hit me up.
All right, keep weeding out the bullshit.